Hello and welcome back to the Demis Hellen channel. In this video, we're going to be looking at arpeggio episode number 3. If you're new to the series, we have previous series covering arpeggios each month at the start of every month. And you get early access over on Patreon if you're a Patreon supporter, and you get access to the MIDI files as well. But the great thing here, if you don't want to become a Patreon supporter, you can just follow the tutorial on screen and get the MIDI for free. Okay, so you can hear it's more progressive, this particular arpeggio, so it's not up at everyone's street, but this is something that you can utilize to develop melodies and understand chords a little bit better as well. Sometimes these are easier to understand because they're a lot slower and a lot more progressive than fast-paced melodies and arpeggios. So jumping in, we're going to look at the pattern and we're going to look at the scale. So the scale that we're using here is a Lydian. Now, if we jump in, you can see I'm using the scale assistant so you can visually see on screen. As usual, your DAW will have this in some fashion. In Cubase, it's using the scales and chords section up here. So by default, this will be velocity. Just choose scale and chord. And you can see now that we've got anything that is in the color of your choice. Mine is green. Will be in key. Anything out of key will be displayed as orange. So if you see any mistakes that are being made, you can see how I'm correcting them. It's just visually easier for you to see. Along the bottom, you can see that we have the notes already set out for the bass. So this is the, not necessarily the chord structure, but this is the bass that it's following. And then we're going to utilize the scale to make the melody. So we're not doing it in the conventional way of building a chord structure and then splitting it up. We're actually making more of a melody, but it's still arpeggiated in a sense. So zooming in on the scale, you can see a Lydian. So A minor, for example, would be A to A, all white notes. This is a Lydian, so it just changes things up and changes the tonality and the effect that the chord structures will have utilizing these scale notes. So we've got A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. So right back round to A. So this has got a very unique sound. You'll hear it in trance a lot as well. And I thought we'll start delving into a few more scales. I tend to keep it in A minor just to keep it simple for people, but sometimes explaining it in a different key encourages you to move into different realms where you might find it difficult, and that's the reason that you find it difficult, because you never use it. Jumping into the pattern, you can see that's our pattern there. I'm just going to build this in 16th notes right next to it. So you can see here I'm following an 8th dotted rhythm to start with, meaning 2 16ths between. And then instead of continuing that pattern, you can see that's the pattern that you typically hear. Let's just mute this one here. It's a very familiar pattern. And all we're doing is shifting this 1/16 over. So we're going into 8th notes straight rhythm and away from that dotted. So you can choose any pattern you want, but this is the one we're doing for the tutorial. And then all of these notes down here are just filling in the gaps. So if I copy and paste them to there, you can see it's just filling in the gaps, and I've made them slightly shorter by turning off the quantize and making them a little bit shorter than the grid size. They are transposed down and you get this. A nice, quick, syncopated pattern. But in the original, you can see I've just lengthened the notes on the top and shorten the ones on the bottom just to give priority to the melody sort of part of that. So you can see it's an arpeggio, but it's more of a melody in this case. So this one sounds like this. So it just gives it tons of energy and room and dynamics as well for the track. So with that, we're going to build our melody now. So we're going to get to the actual main part. We're not going to follow the bass at the moment that we have from the other MIDI. But what I'll do is just make sure they're quantized. In fact, let's just go back, quantize. The reason that I'm quantizing them as well, just for those that are wondering, because these notes are shorter, when you duplicate, it'll put it on the end of this note, for example. So if you look here, if I duplicate these, they're not quite on the beat there. You can see it's trying to put it right next to the previous note. So you just hit quantize, which is Q for me, and it'll put it in time again. Okay, so the pattern is going to move bar by bar. So we're going to move this bar here, then this one, and then this one to create the progression. And the first thing that you'll notice is we've got A in the bass, but we've got a B as the first starting point of our melody. Now, this is intentional. If you listen to A and A, it sounds a little bit too generic. And if we use the next note up in the scale from the B where we started, C sharp, it sounds a little bit too tense. Now, if you're looking for that, that's absolutely fine. Modify this and do as you wish. That's what I encourage. But B just sounds nice and resolved and calm as a place to start. And what we're going to do is just pick bar by bar. So I'm just going to select all the notes starting from bar 2. And I'm going to move this up. And then I'm going to move this up. So I'm just following the notes in the scale, just omitting the ones that are not in the scale. And then I'm going to drop that back down. So that creates a lovely little loop that goes around, but we're going to break that loop and we're just going to have that go up to E there. So you'll hear that using these half steps, if you haven't seen my videos before, half steps are great for adding those little incremental steps that evoke a little bit more emotion within a melody or an arpeggio. These are great for just shifting the melody slightly to give it that lift. So with that, we can just copy this over. Let's loop this section. Now you can do what you wish with this. You can change it up how you want. I'm going to go back down to B, but I'm going to jump up to the E. So we're going to go right up to where we finished. Then I'm going to start dropping this, and then I'm going to leave that there and just see how it sounds. And then down here in the bass, we're going to shift this up to B, and that is mimicking what we see here. It's just moving to the second note of the scale, so you can see A is the first, B is the second. That sounds really nice, and you can hear that's going to flip back round to the beginning. So I'm going to duplicate the whole thing now, right across. Quantize it to make sure it's in time. So now if we just take a listen from here to here. It has a really nice ring, nice loop to it, goes straight back into that part naturally. We're not really working it too hard. And this is the great sort of melody building that you can do to just experiment, because it's so slow with the bass movements and things. It just gives you an idea of how other notes harmonize with the bass notes that you're choosing. So you don't have to choose that bass note. We could jump up to the third, which gives it more of an uplift. But I'm choosing for that incremental move just to give it a little bit of a different flavour. And what that is doing is paying homage to the starting note there on B. So we're just moving the bass up to B, so they're sort of like sat side by side. So you can choose however you want to do that. It's entirely up to you. But we're going to use this, 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 and then you can see in our bass, we jump up to the C sharp here on this one. So with this final one, let's just move it up, and then you can see that we've got that pattern. So it works, we can just utilize this over and over, but we're going to change up how all of this flows on this side. Okay, so with this part, what we're going to do here is we're going to just make this a little bit different to the rest of it. So you can see it rises up like the first part. We could leave it like that, but it's going to be a little bit monotonous and you're going to be bored as a listener to this piece of music. So we're going to try and jump up, let's say to A. I'm just picking this at random, because it's part of the bass note there. So that goes a little bit too high. I'm going to opt for an octave lower. Let's just keep it on the A. That's much better in my opinion. And then we can start experimenting with that final part. So you can see returning to B doesn't quite work in this case because we've like heard a different tonality to this part. So maybe we can jump up. I'm just truly experimenting with this. Just needs to go higher. That's a little bit wishy. Then that can drop that half step. You can hear where it's needed. It just gives it that little incremental movement. So I feel like we can use the E at the end, but this D sharp doesn't work. So I'm going to drop it to a C sharp. Let's see what happens. It works. I'm just going to return it to where it was. I think what's going to work better here is doing something that lifts a little bit higher in terms of that final bit. So whether it goes A and upwards maybe instead of down, and then utilize that half step, we can just experiment with this. That works better. That's where I'm hearing in my head. You might hear it go in a different direction. And then jump to the G, which is that half step. That works really nice. Now, I've got a little thing in mind from the bass here. You can see C and E in the bass, and that's why I'm keeping this on E, so we're doubling up on that bass at the end. So I'm going to bring that up to E. And then this one here up to the C sharp there, and that mimics that bass line there, C sharp. So initially this was a predetermined melody, as you might be able to tell from there's like a pre-part of it done, but I've still improvised this section here to build the melody for you. So you can hear that E gives it a little bit of a lift with the C sharp in the bass. And to me, that works really well. Now, as you've seen, I've changed things up as we've gone along. You can change those notes however you want. If it sounds a little bit odd to you and you want it to flow in a different way, that's your creativity, that's your side of the game, and I would just go for it and use this as a template. That's the whole idea of this series, to sort of build your ideas from this template that I provide. So you can see that's really simply done. I'm going to drag this down and add it to my second layer, and let's just have a quick preview through, and I'm going to use the filter. Beautiful. And finally, something that I don't usually do in this is I'll build the gated synth as well for you. So what we'll do is we'll remove this, and all we're going to do is take this top pattern. This is just usually how we make our chord structures in pads and things like that, just by taking the main melody structure and building it from that. So I'm just going to delete every last bit of note apart from the first in the bar, just so it follows perfectly with this. And then just make them all the same length, and we've got our gated pad. And let's turn that on. And then on top with the melody, let's just make sure everything is filtered in. So you can hear it adds a whole different dimension to that whole section as well, just using a gated pad. And that is really it. I've got a few tweaks to do in the melody for those that have stuck around. So let me know in the comments if you have stuck around. There's just a couple of things that I'm going to show you that you can do to mix up that melody a little bit. Now we can use these sections at the ends of each, let's say 8 bars, or every 4 bars. We can utilize some note rolls and things like that. So let's do this one here. And what I'm going to do is just make these a little bit shorter, and I'm going to get rid of the bass notes. And I'm just going to make a roll, just using the notes in the scale. And let's just drag that one down as well. I'm utilizing both melodies here. So you can hear what I'm doing there. I'm just creating a little bit of interest, just doing something a little bit different. I'm just going to chuck that one note lower. So there's all little things that you can do just to put your stamp on those melodies and just make them slightly different. And again, you can break away from the whole pattern that we're doing here, maybe on the ends. Let's just show it on here. It's just split that bar in half. So we've just got that unique little aspect happening where we just change that bar halfway through, which doesn't happen anywhere else in the track. And that just gives you that little uplift for when it comes back round. So if we put on our loop, we need to put our loop back on. And it just gives you that little bit more of a lift. And you, again, you could do like a roll upwards like those notes there. So hopefully that's give you a little bit of insight into how you can make trance melodies and arpeggios. It's technically arpeggiated, but it is a melody at the same time. So that's what we're working with there. So with that said, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, you know exactly what to do. And if you have any questions or comments about the video, you can ask me in the comments down below. And also, if you want to consider becoming a Patreon, you get early access to this video by a week, as well as the resources, which is the MIDI in this case. The presets are listed on the actual sections here. If we just jump back, you can see that this is Uplifting Trance Collection, and these ones are from the Spire Trance Essentials pack. So thank you very much for watching. I'll look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Take care.